Hi, everybody. Welcome to another UH Studio Architecture podcast. In this podcast, I have another fellow DRL grad, Pavlina Vardoulaki Pryor. How are you?
Hello, Dimitar. Thank you so much for having me. It's super exciting to be able to talk to you, to catch up, because it has been a while from 2015 that we saw each other at the DRL. So it's really exciting to see you. It's exciting to see what you're doing with this podcast and giving people really the opportunity to speak about their passions, the design, and what architecture means to them. So thank you so much for creating this platform and for the invitation.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind word. I actually really enjoy to talk to like-minded people like you and all the other guests around there, and I find it as an amazing opportunity. So much appreciated for the kind words. Cool. So I'm just going to introduce you a little bit, but feel free to jump in there when I miss a couple of things. And I'm just looking at your LinkedIn profile. So you're currently working in Nike as a director of 3D footwear and design catalyst. And you've been there for quite a while. And at the same time, you run DesignMorphine, right, which is one of probably the better known online education platforms for architectural design. And I see a lot of teaching experiences on your LinkedIn as well, which is fantastic. So it would be great to hear about why it would be great to hear your passions about teaching. And then, so you've also attended the Architectural Association DRL Lab from 2013 to 2015. And before that, you have, currently you are also pursuing your PhD, right?
Yes, I keep busy. I do. I keep busy, yeah. But it has been interesting, past 10 years, I would say, after the DRL. I think that I'm very curious and very passionate about computational design and how it can infiltrate different really dimensions of design outside of architecture that has been really the primary force in this space. I'm working now with a very talented team, actually, at Nike on the footwear front. So we're really creating, a product that it's focused on digital and cultural innovation and is responsible for creating cutting-edge products such as ISPA, Co-Create, Explore, Nike Lab, Nike by You footwear. So it has been really interesting product that we're able to work with. DesignMorphine, it's actually its 10-year anniversary, so it's a great milestone for us. We're very excited that we made it to 10 years, and we keep growing, and we keep interacting with our community and being part of something that we're all proud of. It has given me such a great opportunity, really, to learn from others and to stay connected, no matter where in the world we are. So that has been really a great experience.
Wow, 10 years! Congratulations on that. That's I still remember, maybe the last time we met, at one of the physical workshops long time ago at DesignMorphine, when I was just in town and decided to pay you guys a visit. Amazing that it's been 10 years.
Yeah, that's exactly where we started. We started from the Union of the Architects in Bulgaria, with our first workshop back in 2014. That it was the first one that we conducted, and we've grown quite a lot over the past years with the help, obviously, of my partners, the co-founders, also DesignMorphine, Pavlina Georgieva and Michael Pryor. We had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with our community, to work together, to travel, to socialize. And I think that, what was bringing us together is that really the same people that, our closest friends, from the community are the same people that we teach with, that become mentors or mentees or change even their roles, into how, what is their role in DesignMorphine. They keep learning from it, but they keep also teaching, so wearing really different hats, and that's really something that creates great opportunities like for us as a community. We are now more than 50 people in DesignMorphine,
Oh, wow.
and we've yeah, it's a big team. It's a big
50,
team,
so
and
not the
we are
students,
also
50 staff members.
yes, it's not staff. It's basically like they're members. Like so, basically like they're like having their own workshops, their own like projects that like they're running like throughout the year. It's not like a full-time engagement, but still it is like 50 members that we're more than 50 members we're working with right now. Our
And
students
how
are
does it
from more
work?
than
Like,
84 countries.
and how does it
Yeah.
work? Like, do they sometimes take, do they decide if they want to have a workshop and then they do a workshop, or do you guys have
Yeah.
like a general agenda or a
Yeah.
calendar?
We have a calendar that we follow like during the year, but it just depends also about like what the members want to bring to the table, what kind of topics, what is their interest. So there is a lot of freedom of exploration that has been part of DesignMorphine's culture, like from the beginning. There is no really like micromanagement, so it's like any of the members like that like it's part of the organization. They're free to choose their own topics and venture into them into the time slots that we have like during the academic year. But with this like also depends on what kind of projects they're working on, because they might be working on, for instance, like the Master of Science program or the Ph.D. that we offer, and that's a longer engagement. Some of them might be actually like full-time engaged like on these endeavors. And again, like we have, I think, like around 30 educators actually only like in the Master of Science program, and 40 students. So, it's yeah, there are a lot of people basically like that, build the body of DesignMorphine really. And that I think that's where, the energy comes from and the excitement, because we are friends and colleagues, and we like to create together and to imagine, like the future together.
That's fantastic. And does everybody keep in touch with everyone else? Do you have like, some kind of chat or something just to update each other?
Yeah.
So it is like a
Yes,
proper
we do.
community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a proper community, and also our students, when they graduate, we also have forums with them. We keep posting there like a different kind of information, opportunities. Many of the students become members. They teach. So, like it's very organic, like the whole thing, that how it grows. So it's really exciting opportunity to keep, like this togetherness, because through the years, like it has been workshops that really like started my interest, and I learned so much about computational design. And through these workshops and the DRL itself, right, like I've met so many incredible people, and not just only me, but like our community also. But these people are the ones that like we still keep working with through the years. And I think that that's why this is so meaningful, because it keeps this like connection alive. It's not that you just meet somebody once and then, like you've done a project and you go your separate ways in totally different countries, but you can perpetuate this opportunity like to co-create and to be in each other's lives, right? Like in something that it's meaningful to all parties involved.
This episode is sponsored by UH Studio Design Academy. If you're looking for Blender education or how you could potentially incorporate Blender into your design and architecture workflows, then check out uhstudioacademy.com, where we offer various courses for architectural and computational design for learning how to use Blender. If you have thought about incorporating Blender, but you're not exactly sure where to start, then checking out some of those courses may be quite useful for you. Now let's jump back into our conversation with Pavlina. So has any of that influenced the way you and the rest of the DesignMorphine team have organized yourselves?
We try to reimagine, to be honest, like everything, like in DesignMorphine. So I cannot say that we're perpetuating, like in any way the program, like of, like again, like my master's degree, because again, like the influences that we have, like in DesignMorphine, are much more than only my experience. But also for me, it was more interesting, like to create something totally fresh and new. As a methodology, as a community. So it really like it's a hybrid, like, like of my experiences as a student, as an educator, as a designer, right? Like as a leader. So a lot of those things, like they don't come only from one place. They come from a lot of collaborations that have happened through the years, again, through workshops or work, but they also like come obviously like from what gaps that like we identified like in the educational system, and how like we can really like create something that like it's meaningful to us and have the freedom to really create it like in the way that we see it, like being valuable like to the community. So it goes far beyond that. But definitely like I've learned a lot like from like the DRL itself.
I'm just really happy because I subscribe to your email, so I know like which workshops are coming up. And I saw that you have like Blender workshops as well with Laura Maria Gonzalez, whom actually I met because the same CD Next that Michael Pryor invited me to, Laura was presenting also her fantastic studies that she does with Blender that, she 3D prints at MIT.
Yeah, it's we are introducing Blender. She's also joining us in our master's program. So now Blender is also part of the master's program. We do value what it brings to the table. We're super excited about it. We love, again, like how well it's working, like the capabilities, and also that it's open source. So it's like it's highly valued, definitely, and we're looking more into expanding into that space.
That's super interesting to hear because for me, as somebody who's very passionate about, introducing more architects, more designers, the potential of using this free and open source software, I can go on and on. But anyways, I think a lot of it has to start from education, right? Because if people
Yeah.
know this tool in their university, the chances of them bringing that software to the workplace, even though it's not widely used, but it's freely available, could start to impact, the usage of even the way people think about their files, their drawings, because a lot of them are locked behind paywalls these days.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's difficult, like as student, right? Like to approach some of those, especially like my love was Maya, right? Like because I was working with Maya so much, and I started as a Maya tutor, right?
Yeah.
And there is just so many possibilities, but of course, like exactly like what you're saying, being open source, being open-minded also, like being able to contribute, right, like into the development of a tool, again, like as a community, that's something that you just cannot replace, right, like with anything, because there is this passion about the project that is genuine, and you feel that like you're participating and you're not just a viewer that is using a tool. So I think that that's where a lot of the uniqueness comes.
Sorry, I'm gonna go on Blender a little bit because it is, it doesn't sound as sexy as Maya. Like when I was at DRL, spending those long nights, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, would say, "Are you out on a date with Maya again? When am I gonna get a chance?" Blender doesn't read the same way. Anyways, at the annual Blender conference, which was just recently in Amsterdam, the creator of Blender, he said that this is more like a festival than a conference because we are all these weird, crazy groupies that get together and believe in openly sharing knowledge. Weird cult, you know. But
Exactly.
so how do you guys? Yeah, how do you? I guess there's many ways to use it, but I'm curious. How does it fit in your program, in your master's program? Is it like a specific way, or do you try to plug it into like different places?
So this year, maybe I have to explain a little bit like how the master's works in order to understand, like the general, setup. So the master's is organized in a way that there are 5 leading chapters and 5 supporting labs, and through really like we're reimagining the world and rebuilding its core, like like in a way that like we're working first with the human body in chapter 1, and that's where we're working with a lot of polygonal modeling. And in the polygonal modeling space, like we are looking into ZBrush and Maya. And then moving on to chapter 2, we're really like working with what we call the corpuscle, and the corpuscle, it's really the dwelling units of this enhanced human being, right? Like into like again like these like conditions, new conditions that they need to, like the students need to rethink, and then the unit becomes a part of the society. So the society like being again like creating communities, like taking those corpuscles and aggregating them in different way, and also like creating public functions and spaces around them. Moving on to chapter 4, we're working mostly with basically like vehicles and systems of transportation, rethinking what this could be. And in the last phase, there is the phase of cosmogony, which were really like these like changes from the human have grown into creating a totally new world. And that's more on the side of like really like coding, right? Like and in Grasshopper. And where Blender fits right now, and again, like the opportunity here with the master's program is that we are able to change things, improve things like year by year, and rethink a lot of like the strategies about softwares, especially like or how we implement them. But this year, this is a part of our chapter 3, so amalgamation. So we are going to be working with Maria exactly like as you were saying, like aggregating those like in different like in different ways, like with Blender, but it's a parallel exploration also, like that it's happening with Grasshopper. So it really like depends on the students, on like which side they're going to like venturing, depending on again like the approach that they're going to be taking in this chapter.
Thank you for that great summary to hear that it's a very holistic view, right? So great. Software is one thing, and yes, myself, I sometimes get maybe a little bit too passionate about it. And the point is really that it's a design tool in a way to help us improve the quality of architecture, the quality of transportation, the quality of ultimately the way we live, right? So it sounds like you're touching on a lot of those subjects in your master's.
Yes, we're trying to expand the narrative into computational design, what computational design really means and how can infiltrate like in these different industries, right? Like, so all these different chapters, they're representative of different industries that computational design can be used like in, and it is used in. We see so many really giant companies like hiring computational design teams, which computational design means so many different things, like for all of them, right? Because of the scope of the design. But what we're trying to do is really create this tool set, like, and make it available to our students and really give them a really good understanding about the differences of, industry leading softwares, and like seeing like new innovative ways to really like create opportunities to design. So that's where it gets interesting, right? Like when, okay, the tool does what it does, but when you start like working with interoperability between different programs, going back and forth between them and using them for specific and different like parts that like of the project, right? Like that's when you get like some really innovative like designs coming out of it. So here it goes beyond just the computational side of it, of learning, for instance, like Grasshopper and knowing how to do this, or knowing how to make a clean polymodel. It goes into how do we really create opportunities for the students to rethink like their designs, like by using those like different programs, and how do we make sure that they're comfortable and really great in what they do coming out of the program, that they can actually venture into different kind of opportunities, like to design, to work in different companies afterwards. We've seen students that came with the knowledge only of Illustrator and 2D illustrations, especially like students that might have had background, for instance, in fashion design. And we see them coming out of the program as these like, you know, beasts, really, computational design, like these so comfortable, like well, in their own skin, like, you know, venturing into like computational design. And to be honest, that's like what makes me feel that we're doing something right, that, you know, like we are adding value really, like, and helping like the students really, you know, expand their knowledge and also take a different course in their, you know, like lives as designers and experiment, because now the playing field is so much more open than just one of the specialties that they're coming with. So it's creating opportunities for the future, because like knowing so many different things, like understanding them, like you can choose a different path for your life if something is not working out as you expected in an industry or in a company or whatever situation you're in. And we found ourselves in this kind of situations, and that's why, like, I think that we wanted to create this opportunity for the newer generation, and like to help in any way like we can, and the community.
It's fantastic to again hear your story. Now I'm just thinking again, maybe the audience doesn't quite know what computational design is. So how would you define that in a couple of sentences?
Oh, it's really like working with the power of computation, or like computers, right? Like in order like to write code, or to write really like parts like of automate parts of the work that you're doing. In different ways. So it's really like, you know, like getting you like to automate a lot of those tasks. But beyond the automation of the tasks and just like being more efficient, right? Like, because when you encode like part of the design that you're like working with, for instance, if it's a staircase that is changing every day, you know, in a skyscraper, if you create a script for it, obviously like you know, like you're able to change those, to accept those changes and create those changes very fast. But where exactly, like I find the most fascinating part of this is that the different programs work in different ways. And it's an interweaving of like what is really computational design and really like just different types of modeling. So it can be NURBS modeling or polygonal modeling. They're just different types of modeling that are created for different industries. But again, like working with procedural design, that it is a type of basically like computational like design, right? Like, but again, in like mostly like polygonal, like you know, like approaches, or you know, like with working like with other softwares. But what is interesting like here is that when all these different softwares are coming together, like you have like such a vast palette. That's where it gets interesting of how you actually approach a design when you have 20 different paths, right? Like about how to go about it.
Yep.
And
And
I
you can
think
get.
that when you were mentioning architecture,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, no, I just got a thought when you were mentioning architecture and how Blender can help in that field, right? Like, I think that like the interesting part is that normally you would build, right? Like with, again, NURB surfaces, or like work with like Grasshopper, that might be your intuition because it's something that is going to go into the build environment. But what we need to understand about design is that it's not just one step, right? Like there's different steps throughout the design process, like the concept, schematic, and then design development, right? And that applies like to all industries in one way or another, right? Like it might be a different tool you're using, but it applies everywhere. And again, like in the concept phase, that's where if you have a bigger tool set, right? Like an idea about like how to use like these tools in a different way, even if that's again like polygonal modeling, then the ideas that you're providing are much more interesting and original and unexpected, because again of this like, you know, hybridization with like your thought process and the software at the same time.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail. It's exactly how I see it because, you know, whether we would like to or not, design has been very much digitized. So the way that artists used to use paintbrushes, we have to use our digital tools in a very similar way. We really have to get to know them. And I always think of one guy, Mark Cousins, at the AA with his famous Friday lectures saying that at the same time, using somebody else's software is like wearing somebody else's dirty underwear. He was a bit extreme about it, right? He was, and you have to kind of mix and match in ways to make it work. And I think that's very important to what you say is that there has to be, and I actually talk about this myself a lot, is that there has to be like this almost like embrace of technology, right? Where you almost don't see it as a limitation, but as a potential expansion of adding value to your processes. But it's also a little bit difficult in a way, right? Because if you're in a functioning architectural studio, you have clients, and those clients demand to see specific things. And if they don't see those things, you're a bit in the trouble, right? With the clients, the company's a bit in trouble. So there's that one, that side, but then you have the other side, which is okay, how do you constantly upskill? Because there are new tools that come in, there are new ways to think about space. And if you don't embrace that technology, then maybe that client is not going to call you in a year's time or so because maybe you're not efficient enough.
Yeah, the efficiency is everything, at least like when we're talking about businesses, right? Because that's like driven by revenue. So that's where the other part, right, like computational design comes into. And there are so many design changes that happen through any process. And that's what you're tackling. If you have like, again, like your own, like within like the boundaries of whatever software you're using, your own, palette that you're using, right? Like, or different kind of like scripts that you've prepared, like to tackle, similar problems when they come at you, then obviously like you're so much more efficient. That was the way that like I survived like a lot of the, design, challenges I've had like in the past as a designer, right? Like it wouldn't have been possible like creating those and meeting all the deadlines if, like I hadn't automate my processes, to be honest.
Yeah, so definitely computational design is not only, about pretty Instagram pictures. In fact, the bigger part of it is really about this automation of the, let's say, very redundant processes that are essential to the design process, but are a little bit beyond the conceptual design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gets harder and harder to implement as, again, like you're coming like closer to like optimization and reality of like build projects, or even, like launching like any kind of like game design, right? Like just the realities of like whatever optimization means like in the industry you're, like working on.
Yeah. And it's interesting. So do you guys work with the metaverse then as well, or the more of the digital side of things?
So we do, but like just again, like it's project based. So for instance, like we were part of the hackathon for the Microsoft Garage, like, and we had like a project that like we did with some of our alumni, again, like pitching different kind of ideas about like, like how this can be implemented, like in in an educational experience. And also like we are working with Wilder World into creating, like opportunities again, like for learning and to again like come together like as a community in this space. So it is something that like we are very passionate about, and we do believe that it is, part of the future of like design, and in general again like gives a lot of opportunities like to the younger generation to express themselves in the virtual world, right? Like, and we saw like this super hype like of NFTs and Web3 like a couple of years back, but I do believe that this is going to come back, in several years when, the industry is like more ready for it. But I feel that there are a lot of opportunities like through this space.
What kind of opportunities? Is it like more for designers, or is it for like digital twins, or making parts of the building experience or the design concept process, or all of it?
It's everything really, but also like one part is exactly like everything that you mentioned. But beyond that, it's just again the opportunity really like to come together as a community, because again the world gets larger and larger, and like having like this like again like space where you can communicate the same way that we're communicating now through Zoom, like it's going to be like like in the future that's going to be again through probably like different avatars, right, like in a space like that. So obviously, like some of those like opportunities are again for students, like in creating art and being able also like to be free to share this art and to get recognition for what they do, or that might be again like different kind of like a more tangible like products, or like again like if there is integration into the design process, like about like how the metaverse, right, like can be used in order like to collaborate on different kind of projects in real time with multiple people. So all these things are quite exciting about like what this future means.
Yeah, I'm really excited about, and this was something that actually Mariana, who's previous guest, mentioned about the digital repository of unbuilt projects, or even some built projects that people can potentially see, and just have it in there where you can interact on it. You can, if you want, put a VR goggle set so you can walk around the space and sort of experience it. Actually, the first time that I put on a VR headset on a project that I was designing, I thought that, and it's kind of died in a way right now, hasn't it? VR a little bit, but I thought that
Yeah.
this is probably the most valuable tool that has come of recent age for architectural design, both for the designers, but also for potential clients to be able to fully understand and visualize the scale, the conceptual framework, and understand how big things actually are.
Yeah, definitely. And we see also a lot of architectural practices now, a lot of buildings that they haven't, right, like built, they are now part of this, like opportunity, like to create them in a different space, right? Like, so that's a totally different real estate we're talking about. That, like again, like that might have never been possible, like to see any of those creations if that platform wasn't really development.
Yeah, I don't actually completely get it yet, right? Because you could buy things, but it's more like collectibles or and if that, yeah, I don't know how it works exactly. It sounds like you know a bit more, but do you see like any values in, creating these experiences, these architectural experiences that are completely digital? Like, is it more for imagining how the real world could be in a different way, or is it its own completely different experience with its own set of rules?
Well, we're talking about the metaverse like it's one thing, but it's not, right? Like they're just separate metaverses, right? So it's like games, like different like environments, depending on again like of the experience, or like what exactly like it is, it's like the company is working on like its focus. But like where like how I see it, right? Like where what might be the easiest way like to comprehend it, it's again like it's just a game environment that again like it's tied to like cryptocurrency, it's tied to again like again investments, right? Like so it's a little bit like a interesting hybrid between like instead of investing in the like on the market, like like what used to be like the way that people would go about it, its investments is these like NFT collectibles, and like being able also to use some of them in this like metaverse in order to enhance your experience in it, right? Like so for instance, you can be, experiencing the world through different body, from different gadgets or different things that like you've bought like in this metaverse. But the beautiful thing is that they can appreciate hopefully in time, and that's an opportunity also like for you to really like gain, like expand your portfolio, or like sell some of them, create others. So it is like a game, but on the other side it's also an investment. So
Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the MArch program at DesignMorphine, but you've also recently created a PhD program as well. Can you tell us a little
yeah.
bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's again like we're working with the UACG in Bulgaria. So it's my alma mater, where I'm also like like working on my PhD. Mine is a little bit different because I'm actually writing in Bulgarian. So it's a good opportunity to go into this space. But the one that like we're creating with the university, it's a little bit different. It offers 12 different pathways of innovation that like any student can really like venture in. So that's computational architecture, AI, VR, metaverse, prototyping, smart cities. So it's really like very vast, playing field of like what can be explored through, like again, like the PhD. It is a 3 years online experience, so it does allow for a lot of freedom and flexibility, especially for working individuals, which is really something that it's very positive. We have some really amazing mentors that are working with us and are working with the students and the candidates. They, like have real life professional experience, but also like they're really like can advise a lot on academic writing and how to really like structure a lot of like the dissertation part. And I think that like the other aspect of the PhD is that it does have like different kind of opportunities or different kind of options of how you want to really like experience like the PhD. The dissertation is definitely like a part of it, and it is like the most important deliverable. But there are different kind of presentations through the PhD about different experiences that one might have had like during like this 3 years course. Design challenges again that have to do like with the dissertation or the topic, or teaching experience. So it really like varies. There is going like varies like from student to student about how exactly like they're experiencing it, because like again like of the additional like basically like the additional like choices that they make about like how what kind of additions they want to have like in their educational journey.
And how long is your MArch program? The Design
It's a
Morphine
Master of
MArch.
Science. Yeah, no, it's a Master of
Oh,
Science. It's not a
sorry.
Master's of Architecture. Yeah, no, it's okay.
Okay.
It's a Master of Science in Computational and Device Design, and it's 9 months, while the PhD is actually a PhD in Architecture. But again, because the way of how PhDs work, like really the dissertation is like the specialization. So whatever topic is being chosen, that's where the PhD is like on.
Great. Well, thanks for letting us know about that. And do you already have PhD uh, students, or are you on track to get your first ones now, or is this like second or third year, or?
Oh no, we just launched actually. Like, so we're having like our first PhD candidate starting now. So it's quite
Oh,
an,
congratulations.
uh, thank you. It's quite an exciting journey for us and to venture into this space. But we feel that there is a lot of, like one of the most obviously like important parts is again to be able to contribute into, like the community and the discourse on this academic level. It's really, like a very important step for us. And I feel that like also for, our students, just being able to really like contribute and also like learn themselves, organize like their own like thoughts around like topics that they're very passionate about. So it is, an interesting experience, like I would say, like going into a PhD. It feels that it's a very long time, but because it's, like 3 years, right? But it actually like the amount of things that like you learn through them, and because again, like it's not a daily task, like it really flies by, to be honest.
And what are you doing your PhD on?
Well, my PhD is exactly on what I know best. So it's basically computational and advanced design through the lens of education and practice. So like that's exactly like, the creation of the new program, right? And also like about like how the computational design is infiltrating in these different industries that we mentioned in the beginning of our talk. So it's very much exactly like, solidifying a lot of the knowledge that I've acquired through the last years from, both my passions, right? Like the education and how it leads actually like into practice, and how it's empowering again like students like into like feeling like comfortable like in any kind of challenge that like comes their way like on the design side.
And do you feel that computational design is being adopted worldwide a lot,
Yes,
or is there still a lot of potential for it to grow into existing programs in existing universities and also into new programs like DesignMorphine?
yes, I do feel that there is a lot of interest. We see like major companies like Amazon and Apple and Nike, Adidas, no matter like the field, really like Samsung, right? Like no matter the field, like there is now a computational design team behind it. And I feel that all these companies, like they're really leading the way because again, like this is not just anymore something that it's, like luxury. It's actually a must-have because again, like of the realities and the stressors about like, bringing product to the consumer faster, accelerating a lot of the processes, creating a language of design that it's, like what we could call the unseen, right? Like something that is very exciting, it's new, it's fresh. But all these things, like, like without technology, like they're just not possible, like to really like happen in the fast-paced reality we're living in.
Interesting that you mentioned Amazon. So, if I think about Apple, let's say, or another product or Nike, right, I can really clearly visualize and picture how computational design might be used. But how would it be used at a company like Amazon or any other similar
Well,
companies?
Well, we see, like, for instance, like it could be because it could be it's an automation of processes, and that's what it thrives with, right? Like, so it's exactly like how actually the floor operates about like distribution of goods. Like, it's all like about efficiency to, the second. So these efficiencies cannot be calculated, like manually, right? Like, so that's where again, like those calculations are happening. It might not be like exactly like on the design side, especially like on that side. It's more about like thinking about the distribution centers as machines and, like designing according to that. So it's just in the more broader world of what, design could mean. But it's the same thing also like in Apple, if you think about it. It's again a machine and you're trying to fit as much as possible like inside it and like have it like a streamlined and like a simple like as a design, right? Like it looks very simple, but like what's happening inside and how it's packed and created and distributed. This is again like, like you need to run those like optimizations in order to get the best possible result. It's not done manually. So in a way, like if it's Apple or if it's Amazon, it's, it looks very different, but in reality, it's not. It's the same idea behind it. Now, when we're talking about like more like design or fashion design oriented, like computational design, that's like where it becomes like much more playful until it again like has to go into production, right? Like so the reality hits in one or another way, like where again like in the different phases is just again like a totally different approach, right? Like, and that's where the benefit is understanding what is available and being able again like to go into understanding coding and computer language or even robotics in order, you know, like to feel that you can go into like any of those fields and really problem solve and expand again like and create value.
Right. Yeah, I guess I never thought that a warehouse at Amazon would be done by a computational designer. I always thought it would be more about, you know, a team that scripts, but I'm just trying to think. Yeah, there has to be a bit of design in it, doesn't it? So you have to design the robot to go in a specific way, or to not hit things and to move things around, and uh, but it's very different, I suppose, from an architect. You know, his mindset, mental set, which is really how design is tied into the execution of functionality. But actually, design tied into execution of functionality, yeah, it could be applied to anything, can't it?
Yeah. And of course, like again, like that's like more the broader space, but also like a lot of these teams, they do have like product or project related, like more innovation centers, like that they might be working on like a very hands-on like project that like might be even more like design oriented. Because when I'm talking about design or computational design, I'm really thinking about it in this like super broad spectrum, right? Like so you could say exactly like that it is like more engineering or coding based, but again when you're taking like those decisions, right, like there is like more than that in my opinion. It's just like a very vast spectrum of like where you could be.
Okay, so what do you see yourself as these days? Do you consider yourself an architect or a computational designer? Clearly an educator, I think that's for sure, right?
That's a good question. I don't know, to be honest, what I consider myself what, because I do wear a lot of hats. Maybe, you know, trying to maybe like problem solver. That's like you know, like I'm trying to enable basically like teams and people like to, you know, create. So that's like very much like my role. Like, so it's beyond like really like computational designer or architect or you know like being really like on in these like you know roles, because like my role is making sure that others you know like are able like to learn, to grow. So I'm more or less like creating like the environment or the system that like this operates, but I'm not always the one that actually execute, right? So it's a very different role, but having the experience of you know like computational design, like as a designer, as an educator, you know like as an architect, like it makes me just understand some of the complexities, challenges, or even understand where people are coming from, what they might be lacking or what they might be interested in. So I think that like that might be you know like the hat I'm wearing like lately.
That's great. So I have another question then. So I think so far we mentioned a lot of companies that are in a way embracing, you know, the need and the desire to change how they think about design, whatever that might encompass, right? So whether it's product design, whether it's efficiency design, warehouse, and so on. How would you talk to a company that doesn't yet know how computational design could help them?
Well, it
What
depends
would you
on the
say to
company,
them?
right? It
Yeah, so
depends on the
let's say
company, right?
architecture company, right? So I think they're probably the hardest ones, aren't they?
Well, it's more about like efficiency. Like if you put numbers in front of anyone, like you convince any kind of business only with numbers, right? Like so, Um, that's a funny question because I remember I was working in an office that really like the computers were really slowing us down. We were working on really big projects, and I calculated, for instance, like how much time, like wait time, like that is per day, and how much like that actually like accumulates. And when you put the numbers together, like it's frightening. But again, like just how much time, like again, like you're saving through these processes, it's exactly the same thing, right? So unfortunately, that's what drives companies' efficiency. That's the only way to convince them. We
Yeah.
care about design and like what like design means, and like it's very romanticized in our heads. But when you're really like trying to again please like your investors, that's when like totally different priorities come into play.
Yeah, I guess that's very different on the spectrum that maybe some potential students might think about what it is like to go into computational design, or not even go, but start to think and specialize a little bit more. But now you made me, you reminded me of a friend of mine, a colleague of mine at HOK when I used to work in London, who was very talented designer, but even more talented computational designer. And now he works in a different company where he's actually coding, making like the software more efficient for the design workflows that they need to do in that company.
Yeah, and
Cool.
again,
So,
this step, like as you're saying, like this step was made because, like, from design or from architecture, right? Like that's a stepping stone, like towards like a more engineering, like like based like profession, right? But the stepping stone like could have been like different in different pathways, and that's what I think that's where the value is, like about like this type of design and this kind of like work, exactly like the opportunities that you might be able to seize through it. And also like as things are progressing with AI, with technology, right? Like it is a little bit like the saying uh, that technology is the answer, but what was the question, from Cedric Price, right? Like it's not going away, and if you don't participate in it, like there is no opportunity, like like to help this progress, or if we even care about like more ethical technologies in the future. Like we all, like we have responsibility really, like as designers, to participate in the discourse, no matter how uncomfortable like that might be. But everything is going into that direction. So I do feel that when we started, like with all this knowledge, designers research, or again like design and coding and robotics, like that must have been like seeing again like as a luxury, not a necessity. But as we progress, and 10 years later, like seeing how these things are infiltrating, right, like all industries, and the value that they bring, I just don't think that like they're, going away. That it's only going to become more valuable. And I do feel that this is really the time, like to set yourself up like for the next years to be successful, to be able to navigate like the changes in the industry, to experiment, to learn more like from other industries, to expand your knowledge, go beyond like even what is available in your own industry, right? Like because again of the constraints, or like just the learning process, there is just so much more. You just cannot be creative just staying in the same box, right? So those kind of experiences, they open your mind to different possibilities, even in your primary field.
I love that you mentioned Cedric Price, right? Because, DRL, that was beaten into our heads. And I think very, very justifiably so, because we were so fascinated with technology back then that sometimes we took it for granted. So what is your question if technology is the answer?
I have no idea, to be honest. What's my question? That's a good question, but I don't know what it is. I think that like what has been, on my mind lately, and that like I would be happy like to share this like with the community. It's, mentorship and how important it is to our, society and how we grow, and how much value there is like to this, right? Like being open, like being able like to communicate like with the younger generation or people that like might be interested in like what we do. So now for the month of December, we're going to be offering like free mentorship, basically sessions with our members from DesignMorphine and some of our partners. And we're going to be sharing more on Instagram during that time. But I think that it's going to be a super fun endeavor. And these sessions are like one-to-ones. So, like it's going to be, again, like a great way just for, like to help the community and to answer some of, like their questions. I do that myself, like very often. I do have time on my calendar, like that, and I meet with students constantly. And, I hear their stories, what they care about. And, like there is a discourse with the students like every year towards especially the end of the program about how we can do things better. And that's something that like we really, like care about, and we really put a lot of effort and thoughtfulness into really like perfecting as much as possible, right? Like we're all human, but perfecting the educational experience for students, get them from, like in the most enjoyable way like possible through a lot of like the learning pains, but also like being there for them like through the whole journey. So these are some things that like are, meaningful like to DesignMorphine and meaningful for me personally.
So it sounds like your question is really how can you add more value to, students and via education?
Yeah.
And where do you draw new inspiration from?
Well, I might be people actually, because as I mentioned, like design is very exciting, right? Like, and it can be like something that it's interesting, like to really can inspire a lot of, like interesting conversations, or, like yourself as a designer, it can inspire you to create something. But for me, it is the people, it is the community. It is also like the people that are close to me. My first, like in primary inspiration comes from my mother, because like she's a PhD like in education for people, for children with learning disabilities, and I learned so much from her about like different techniques and different ways like to, like approach this. She used to take me with her when she was conducting her research. I was just 6 years old, but she would approach me really like as a grown up and even like share some of, like her findings with me. And this was something that like fascinated me from then. So a lot of the methods or like ideas that like I've heard from her, I started like applying them to my own friends, like helping them out, or younger students that like I was, like working with or teaching. And I've had like, a lot of instances where I would really like get a, sixth grade student and give them the curriculum for the 12th grade. So 6 years after, and don't tell them obviously like about like what I'm doing, but they were able to really like learn like so much of this curriculum, absorb and understand like a lot of that without knowing that this is a difficult subject, right? So that was a very interesting, like find like that, like how much really the human mind is able to absorb when the information is just presented in different ways than just, like the boring classroom. And I feel that like exactly like with the master's program, I'm always like coming back to that, because for me, computational design is not something easy, right? Like, or computation or like, like coding. It doesn't come naturally to me. It doesn't come like easy. But that's where it makes me understand the difficulties, challenges, like how this information could be organized or could be, presented to the students so they can absorb it in the best possible way and also for them to really accelerate that learning, because in our program that's only 9 months that you're learning 15 different softwares. Like normally, like if I would see something like that in a program, like that would
It
trouble me,
sounds a bit
because like
intense.
yes, yeah, that would trouble me. But the thing is that they actually learn a lot, and that's like what I think, that it's because we're able to focus on a lot of stepping stones and grow from there, like their knowledge, and things don't really run in parallel. So that has been something that it is very different from other educational practices, that, knowledge, software runs in parallel. Another thing that is very different, I would say, has to do with the educators who are designers, or they have real life experience, right? Like they're also the same professors, there's the same like educators that are the software educator. So that's when, like you're talking to people who understand both sides and not just one side of the conversation. That's where like I found that like that was super, super helpful, really, like for the students to work with those, specialists that they bring so much like to the table.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I teach a summer workshop. It's an 8-week workshop for architecture students. And I'm both the technical tutor, so doing it with Blender, of course, my studio, but then, so teaching the software, but then also teaching them about design. So it's a full studio class
Mm-hmm.
where and it is challenging, right? So, all the students, they don't have any experience with that, but so they're trying to learn both the software, but then how do you apply the software? Going back to Cedric Price, what is the question you're trying to answer with this answer?
Yeah.
So yeah, 9 months is a very short amount of time, which means that your students are very well disciplined, right? And very ambitious to want to pick up the software and the modules that you mentioned. So you basically have exactly the time of a summer workshop, right? So 8 weeks for per module, it sounds like.
Yeah, more or less, exactly. And we see more and more students actually preferring like DesignMorphine and the masters than even Ivy League schools. So that's something that like
Wow.
has been, like putting like a tremendous, like believe in us, and to really like trusting us with, their next steps like in their lives. And we see more and more students like really doing this because they understand that they're going to be learning something that it's actually going to be helpful. But on the other hand, also because DesignMorphine, it's not a university, it's not like a company, like others, it's a community. That the other aspect of it is that we help each other like through like different really like phases of our lives. So that means that like we do keep in touch with our students. We try to help them like really like find opportunities like to apply the knowledge, like even after like graduation. We invite everyone who is really like close to us from the industry. We've had students even in the second month of the program really like being invited to work in like so many different really amazing companies. So, like we regard this as success, because it's not just the learning like process, that it's obviously like very valuable, but it's also like knowing that, like we care like about their placement also, and, like helping them through this phase. And, perpetually keeping in touch, like, no matter how many years pass.
Fantastic. And uh, I'm glad you also mentioned that you actually continuously mentioned the importance of mentorship and a sense of community. So how do you manage the balance in your personal and professional life? Because it sounds like, and you mentioned that you're wearing quite a few hats. First off, your full-time position at Nike as a director at an R&D department sounds, what I imagine, quite demanding, right? And then What is your role actually in DesignMorphine? Are you looking after like the whole
Well,
program? It sounds the reason I mentioned it is because that sounds like another full-time job, right? And then
it
doing a
does, but
PhD.
yeah, yeah, I understand that, but because design morphing has grown, like probably like it is a little bit like a child, right? Like in the beginning of it, like you
Yeah.
put a lot of effort to set up a lot of like things, and then as it grows, like it can do a lot of things on its own. So
I'll
that's
tell
why it
you in a
doesn't
couple of
really
years
like
when my children are 10 years old how they are, but right now they're still in the, you know.
very early, okay, early stages. Okay, you let me know how it goes if it was a good comparison. But definitely, like that's like that. I'm trying to automate the things that the approach like about like what we were saying about computational design, right? Like it's about
Yeah.
optimization. So it's like in
Yes.
my core thinking about like how to
Okay.
optimize my processes, like with people, with like all my tasks, like so it is like very much in my mindset. But I do want to thank you about asking this question because it's a great question. It's super relevant. I do prioritize like the things that are most important to me. So definitely sleep and making sure that I stay connected like with my family, with my friends, that people that like really matter to me no matter what or no matter where I am. That really keeps me sane. And I do, as I said, like I do, my current role is mostly like problem solving and empowering others. I'm very organized, very punctual because like, again, like I don't have like more than the time frame that I have in order to deal with like certain challenges or like tasks. I prioritize a lot. Like, so like I've learned to really switch gears quickly, like, and focus on what is really like in front of me as a challenge. When I do have downtime, I do prepare things that like I can see them coming into the future and I enjoy them the same way that like I would design, but like I'm just thinking of like potential new programs or potential new collaborations, designs, like a lot of things that like I just, daydream, but like put it like in a way like in action. A lot of things like when they actually like come to realization, then I again like put them in the priority list and start like tackle them like really. But because the thought process behind them like has started like earlier on, it doesn't feel as stressful. So that's something that it's definitely very helpful. That might not be again like helpful for designers like per se, but like it is helpful for me. And I try to stay resourceful and learn to trust my instincts. That's, I think that like it does apply to anyone really. To really like think outside of the box, but also like trust yourself a little bit like in the process, because you just can't control everything, right? Like, so a little bit like like staying grounded, like trying to look at the bigger picture, like that. These are things that like definitely like help me a lot. But again, the community has been an inspiration. It has been my strength, because if I was to do like any of these things like alone, I don't think that like that would have been, it's just impossible, right? Like that's like the difference. Like these people that like we're collaborating with, that we're working with, they're in my life like in different ways, right? Like my husband is my, and my closest friend, Svetelina, they're my partners in design morphing. So there is like, a very personal connection with these people beyond like the work environment. My colleagues in design morphing and at Nike were close friends. There's the same people that like came to my wedding, the same people that we celebrate with, or we help each other go on vacations with, right? So I'm not the one like to talk about like boundaries, right? Like about professional and personal life. Definitely, I'm not a good example of that. Things are really blurred, but I enjoy them that way, and they make sense to me. And I'm also willing to pay the price of sometimes when things are, not making perfect sense, or they're not going perfectly, right? Like, because exactly when you overcomplicate these relationships, you never know like how things grow with time. But for me, it's worth it, and I could not do it any other way.
That's great. Yes, community is something that's quite important, especially in a highly globalized world. And I uh, realized the downfalls of globalization when we had children, because you realize then how important that more traditional role of community is, right, in the role of growing children. But it's not only that, right? It's also in the role of, developing as a professional. It's in the role of, your next steps of how you grow as a professional and so on.
Definitely.
And so I think you answered a little bit of my next question, but I'll just ask it anyways in case there's something different. But how do you maintain your mental health?
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, I'm just trying to, like, prioritize and organize like my thoughts a little bit, like on, like what is the task at hand, switching gears fast, right? Like, and it's because again, like it comes with experience, right? Like I think that like it comes a lot on that. And I have been fortunate again to have just, the working with the best people in the industry. So I put a lot like like of trust in them because again like they are just amazing in what they do. I really respect what they do. So like and because like we know each other and we grow each other like through the years, like that's like what like it gives really like a peace of mind, knowing that like like you have the same values.
So, do you have any suggestions for, young architects or maybe even not so young, and they are looking to feel like a sense of community? You clearly have like the office, right? As a student, you have your classmates, then you have the office. But what I particularly like about what you were mentioning, and you keep mentioning it, and I really appreciate that you keep mentioning it because it is very important, right? That sense of community throughout your professional life, right? So with Design Morphine, it sounds like it's encompassed pretty much all of your professional life in one way or another, right? So, what do you see maybe that there should be like other organizations like Design Morphine that people can become parts of, or do you imagine that similar to uh, maybe like more traditional universities could incorporate like small clusters where people can try to keep in touch with each other? I think it naturally happens at some point, right? We all tend to keep in touch with some people that we kind of have a better relationship with, right? So classmates and so on. But that, over the years, like that relationship, like tends to shrink and shrink and shrink unless you have like some very strong affiliation, whether it's professional, personal, and so on. And then, at the end, there's a lot less. So I don't know. Do you think that what you guys are doing could be somehow replicated? Could it become like a system, or is it like too organic, or, you know?
That's a great question. Can it be replicated? I think it is very organic. It depends on the people and their mindset because what we see is that just depends like how you're approaching like what you're creating, right? Like the reason that design morphing like is still here after 10 years is because we never saw it as a business, right? Like, and a lot of like, again, like the time that we started, there was so many different like workshops, right? Like that was the golden era of workshops. That's how I started, as I mentioned before, its creation. But the thing is that like, because like we weren't bound to those, like that wasn't the primary interest there, right? Like to make something really like business oriented, it what helped us really like stand the course of time and grow with it, right? Because that's like what happens like with maybe like other like spaces or organization, like it depends what the primary focus is. If the primary focus it's not like keeping in touch like with the people that like you admire like no matter what and creating opportunities to like keep in touch and create together and be creative and just have fun, right? Like then, like these other primary, like objective, it's what takes over. So it's really like in what is in the heart of like what you're really creating, right? Like that's always going to be there and you can't escape it because it is, again, like your decision of like what are you trying to achieve, right?
Great. Yeah. So I think that's a great way to wrap it up. And I don't know if you have anything else you would like to mention, but it's been a great conversation so
Well,
far.
likewise, I'm very happy that we were able to catch up. Like I'm, like excited about like the new, like endeavors of DesignMorphine. Feel free, like to reach out. Like if you have any questions, we will be doing this like free mentorship sessions in December. So I'm very excited about those. I always want to, like hear back from students, their perspectives, their, like life experiences, what matters to them. So, my door is always open. Like you can find my Calendly link, like on, like our website. And yeah, like I think that like if you're interested to learn more about the programs themselves and how they're set up, learn more about the educators that participate in them and that students can learn from. There is a lot of information like on our website. There are open days on YouTube. We also post all our chapter presentations on YouTube with the students from the master's program. I'm very proud of their progress and their hard work. So please feel free, like there's so much information that you can find there.
And where can we find that information?
So designmorphine.com or again, like searching DesignMorphine on YouTube or Instagram, like it's the same name.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's great talking to you and catching up with you. So hoping that we can continue our talks later. Thanks again for your time.
Of course. More topics to come. Thank you so much, Inter.